Thank you. Hello, good to have you with us on BBC London. Coming up this evening, the number of children in the capital with special educational needs and disabilities has reached record levels.
It's terrifying because he needs to be in school. He's very bright, he's very able, but he needs to be taught in a way that he can manage and cope with.
Also ahead tonight, lowering the drink-drive limit and learner drivers waiting 6 months before their practical test. The government announces plans to shake up driving laws. Plus,
I did this globe to show how climate change is ruining our world, but I also did this bit to show how beautiful our world is.
the world in their hands, why young students have created their own globe sculptures for a special exhibition. And 50 years after London-born May Savage rebuilt her home brick by brick after moving it 100 miles, her story is being made into a film. A warm welcome to the programme. This week, children have been settling back into school after the Christmas break. But for pupils requiring support for special educational needs and disabilities, that can be a challenging time. Analysis by BBC London has found the number of children needing that additional help in classrooms has risen by a third in the last decade. There's concern it's putting a financial strain on some schools and council budgets. Bhavani Vadi has more.
School is a struggle for 10-year-old Alistair, who is autistic and has ADHD.
I have to go to school. Why do you have to go to school? Because it's a school day. I've got a meeting at school as well.
His mum, Nicola, kept a video diary for BBC London to show how challenging life can be for families with children who have special educational needs.
Every Wednesday, Alistair doesn't want to go to school. So I'm making pancakes, try to convince him to go to school.
Alistair attends a resource base in a mainstream primary school, but still finds it challenging. The day we met, he was collected early because he became completely overwhelmed in class.
If I have a day off, I have to stay local because I need to know that there's somebody around to pick him up. Somebody has to always be available. And I don't know what that looks like in secondary school. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying because he needs to be in school. He's very bright, he's very able, but he needs to be taught in a way that he can manage and cope with.
Families are also facing an anxious wait for change. A long-promised government overhaul of the special educational needs system has been delayed multiple times.
There's undoubtedly a crisis in the system. Our fear is that talk of send reform will mean watering down some of those rights and making it harder for children to get the support they need. At the moment, we have a system where children's rights are clear, but they're not always upheld. And that's because the law is not implemented as it should be. So we would say that the solution going forward is to make the system work as it should.
There are many difficult days and nights for the family.
Alice is still awake. He's upstairs in his bedroom, in the top floor. Bouncing around, but it's 11:15 and he's got school tomorrow. The problem is that we've had a problem with his melatonin, so we couldn't get the normal dose and normal brand that he has, which means he either doesn't go to sleep or he goes to sleep at about 9:30 and then he wakes up at 3 or 4.
He's gone into school at 12 o'clock after waking up at 10 o'clock and having 2 hours of refusing, but luckily Lego, a hot chocolate, and then just a bit of time has refreshed his mind.
New BBC London analysis found the number of pupils in the capital schools with special educational needs provision has increased by a third in the last decade. Those with the highest level of need, who have a legally binding education, health and care plan, has almost doubled in that period. And autistic pupils receiving support have increased by 158%. This dramatic rise in the number of pupils needing special educational needs support is putting severe financial strain on London's councils, with many at greater risk of bankruptcy because of insufficient funding.
I think it's a real struggle for the schools to meet that demand and for the councils to step in when we also have our financial constraints. We are having to undo decades of underinvestment, and I believe that if you have early intervention you have children in the right place and not having to travel long distances, that you see that cost diminish.
The right support can lead to success. Eddie now works as a healthcare assistant, but he suffered autistic burnout from a lack of support at school. He was then issued with an education and healthcare plan, which gave him the legal right to the help he needed. This led to a supported internship through Ambitious About Autism.
I've always wanted to share my story and be the person that I would have wanted to see when I was struggling without the diagnosis and support. And I want other young people to know that programs like this do exist and that the support is available and that you can succeed with the right support.
The Department for Education says it's inherited a SEN system on its knees. It recently announced £3 billion for new specialist places in mainstream schools and that it will set out plans for reform in its schools white paper early this year. But behind the numbers are families fighting for help and asking how long that fight will last. Bhavani Vadi, BBC London.
And our thanks to Nicola for sharing her experience with us. It is an issue we'll continue to explore, so we're really keen to hear from you. If you've been trying to navigate getting more SEN support for your children, or if you've managed to get the services you need and are happy to share your story, just scan the QR code there to send us a WhatsApp, or you can email us at hellobbclondon@bbc.co.uk. Now, road safety is an issue that affects every single one of us. And today, the government announced new road safety plans, including lowering the drink drive limit and learner drivers facing a minimum of up to 6 months between theory and practical tests. Jo Campbell has spoken to a mum of a teenage driver from Buckinghamshire who died within months of passing his test.
So straight away, we come in the room here.
This is Drew.
A sideboard full of memories.
I've got a locket of his hair and his ashes inside there.
This is all Yvonne has left of her son after last year's fatal crash.
He was going to be a young lorry driver when he turned 19. He was going to do his HGV. Yeah, really good. Even though he had ADHD as well, for his driving, it was the one thing he was really good at.
Drew had been behind the wheel of HGVs like those his dad drove since he was at primary school. He passed his test first time after just 7 lessons, but his mum still worried on nights like the one last March when she woke to find he hadn't come home.
I didn't wake my husband up. In my pyjamas, I got in my car and drove to his location. And as I approached the road, the police were there, the road was closed.
Driving with 2 mates, he hadn't seen this junction until it was too late. The car landed on its roof, leaving him fatally injured.
My worst fear had come true. It was one of my worst fears ever. And all my chats I'd had with Drew about driving was, I don't want to get a knock at the door. I don't want you to be another statistic.
Last month, they joined families at a service for those killed in road crashes.
Jason Alexa.
But Yvonne had hoped Drew's death might have been remembered for bringing a change in the law.
I do believe if Drew wasn't allowed to carry passengers, he'd still be here today because he wouldn't be out driving at night time with his friends. To save more lives, I don't want another life like Drew lost. I now see, when I look more into it, how important it is to make these changes. I do think he could have done with a good 6 months of road experience, and then if he wasn't allowed to carry passengers, that would have given him an extra at least 6 months, do you see? By that time you've grown up that little bit, whereas he literally passed his test and was allowed to go and pick up his mates the next day and full control of everything.
That was Yvonne Doolan speaking to Jo Campbell, and you can see more of those proposed road safety changes on the BBC News website. Next, as we've been hearing, scientists are hoping that thousands of bowel cancer samples stored at a specialist hospital in London dating back to the 1960s can help them understand why there's a rise in the number of people under 50 being diagnosed. The aim is to help develop effective ways of preventing cases. Well, I'm joined this evening by Professor Trevor Graham from the Institute of Cancer Research London, and also Holly, who's an actor and was diagnosed with advanced bowel cancer when she was just 23. Thank you both for coming in. We really do appreciate it. Holly, can I ask you first? You've been cancer-free now, you said, for more than 3 years. But looking back at the time, did you think someone as young as yourself, as you were then, could get bowel cancer?
Absolutely not. I don't think anyone expects to get bowel cancer in their early 20s. It was a complete shock when I was diagnosed. I'd been trying to figure out what was wrong with me for about a year before that diagnosis. Sadly, my symptoms were missed, I think, because of my age, and also it was during the pandemic when a lot of GP appointments were happening over the phone. So unfortunately, that diagnosis was delayed, and then that was even more shocking when I got the news.
And you mentioned the symptoms. What were those symptoms?
Yeah, so it was things like bleeding when going to the toilet, bloating, changes of bowel habit, and weight loss, which was unexplained.
And before I turn to you, Trevor, how are you doing now, Holly?
Yeah, I'm much better, thank you. I'm getting married this year, which I'm really excited
congratulations.
about. Thank you.
Professor Trevor, these samples that are, have been stored, some of them as far back as the 1960s, how will these samples help?
Well, the number of young people like Holly getting bowel cancer has more than doubled over the past few decades. And the only thing, so something must have changed out there in the world that's causing this increase. And so we kind of need a time machine to go back and find out what that thing is. And these old samples really are like a time machine. As you say, they've been collected for, I think, about a century, right back to the 1950s when the NHS was created. So we can go back and look in these old samples and find out what it is that's changed over that time. And hopefully we'll be able to figure out what it is causing this increase in bowel cancer in young people.
And is it true that different causes of cancer leave different marks or signatures, on the DNA of cells that have become cancerous?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's lots of theories out there about what might be causing this increase in bowel cancer in young people, from changes in diet or exercise through to pollutants, say microplastics is an idea. But one of the leading causes we think is changes in the bugs that live in our bowels, the microbiome, and a particular kind of E. coli leaves marks and damages the lining of the bowel, and it's those marks that we'll look for in the samples.
And just briefly, how long will this testing take, if you like, or when you'll have an answer, or even a clear answer?
Yeah, well, it's research, so it's hard to put a definitive number on it, but we're hopeful within a few years we'll start to get some strong clues about what's going on and be able to make a difference.
And Holly, can I ask you, do you think collectively we need to reset our minds, that people aren't too young to have bowel cancer?
Absolutely. I think that's what's so important about this research. It's showing that it's not just old people that get bowel cancer. I'm living proof of that, and we need to do more to protect young people because they're more likely to be diagnosed at a later stage when their symptoms are more severe. They'll have more treatment, which has life-changing consequences.
OK. To you both, really appreciate your time here. Professor Trevor Graham, and of course to you, Holly, we wish you all the best, especially for your wedding later this year. Thank you both. Turning now to a roundup of some of the day's other news stories. A man has died after being hit by a marked police car which was responding to an emergency call overnight in South London. The man in his 30s died at the scene on Borough High Street. The incident has been referred to the police watchdog, the IOPC, for investigation. 18 people, including 9 school children, have been injured in a crash between a bus and a school coach in Reading. The children, along with the coach driver, suffered minor injuries and 2 people were taken to Royal Berkshire Hospital for further treatment. An investigation is underway. And Sea Life London Aquarium says it has made meaningful progress in identifying areas for action following criticism over its penguin enclosure. Merlin Entertainments, which owns the venue, held a meeting with independent experts and animal welfare groups following a campaign against the captivity of 15 Gen 2 penguins. Now, the election may be nearly 2.5 years away, but today Reform UK have named the woman they want to be London's next mayor. They've chosen Layla Cunningham as their candidate. She's a former Conservative councillor who defected to their party last year and is promising to be the new sheriff in town if elected. Well, our political editor, Carl Mercer, is here. Hi, Carl. Pretty unusual to select a candidate this early, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really 2.5 years away from the election, as you say. So why would they do it? Well, we have another bunch of elections coming in May, which I think are going to be seen as crucial for reform and how they actually cope in the capital and whether their message can chime here as it does in much of the other parts of the country. Because at the moment, Reform only have 7 councillors out of 1,800 in London. They have 2 assembly members. But they have real hopes, I think, this time round in these elections, particularly in some of the outer London boroughs like maybe Bexley, Bromley, Redbridge, those sort of areas, and have hopes even of winning some of the councils. So let's have a listen to what Layla Cunningham had to say today.
Now, these local elections, I tell everyone, will be a referendum on Sadiq Khan, on Labour's broken London. It's Londoners' chance to vote out every councillor who's propped him up and stayed silent while he's let our city down. From now until May, I will be spearheading our campaign, touring every borough, because for the first time in years, Londoners finally have a real alternative.
So did she give some clues on what she might do if she were elected?
Well, you said she wants to be the new sheriff in town. She said she's going to give the Met new marching orders and crack down on a war on crime she is promising. So that's the main thing. Also talks about scrapping ULEZ, although she wouldn't be drawn on whether she'd go the same way with the congestion charge, and also talked about possibly driverless trains on the tube.
OK, and what reaction has there been?
Predictable, I think. We've had the Lib Dems and the Labour Party both saying reform, and Layla Cunningham are talking London down all the time, and the Labour Party pointing out that Nigel Farage, when introducing Layla, said the elections were in 2027, but they're in 2028. And a final reaction from the Mayor of London, the current Mayor, say Londoners face a clear choice, someone who believes in London and delivers, or a reform candidate fronting a party that talks the city down. So the bag chat has already started, and we're 2.5 years out.
I see where you're going with that. Carl, thanks very much indeed. That's our political editor, Carl Mercer. And just staying with politics of sorts, the daughter of murdered Southend MP Sir David Amess met the Home Secretary today demanding answers about his killer. Sir David was stabbed during a constituency surgery in 2021. The man responsible was already known to the police and had previously been investigated. Well, our reporter Simon Dedman is at Westminster. Good evening, Simon. You've been with the family today.
Yes, I have, Riz, and it's just a few months ago that Katie Amess felt the Prime Minister and the government were ignoring the family and the questions that they still have after Sir David Amess, their husband, father, and the long-term Conservative Essex MP representing Southend West was killed. Today, Katie Amess and her team went to the Home Office and met Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, who has today said that there will be an independent review into what happened surrounding the murder of Sir David Amess. But Katie Amess has told BBC London tonight that she is disappointed that it is not going to be a full public inquiry.
I'm definitely disappointed and frustrated and upset, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I was hoping to be walking out there with them granting me a full public statutory inquiry, but that isn't the answer that I got.
Some people might see this as quite a win that you have got the review, and certainly one last year into the death of Harry Dunn and how the authorities handled that. The family were very happy back in December a month ago with what happened.
Listen, if I am sitting here in however long it takes to get the review and I have the answers, then great. I am so happy that I got those answers. It's just that the way my family has been treated up until now, it doesn't really fill me with confidence and inspire me with hope.
Well, the questions that the family have is what happened after Ali Harbi Ali, Sir David's killer, was dropped by the counter-terrorism programme Prevent, to the moment 5 years on where he ended up stabbing the Southend West MP to death during his constituency surgery. Did they check his social media? Was he known by the security services? These are the sort of things that they want to know, and apparently the Home Secretary has said the review will answer that. We haven't heard from the Home Office tonight, but they have previously told the BBC they do take the questions of the Amos family very seriously.
OK, with an update there from Westminster. Simon, thank you. Now to some unique globe structures. These sculptures are some of the ones created by young students in Southwark. The world in their hands, if you like. The aim of the exhibition is to explore themes of identity, global connections and the shared histories that shape our world. Alice Bandakravi has been taking a look.
Created by local school children, these artworks explore heritage, identity and climate change.
So this is my bit, and I put fist and human rights to show that we all have all the rights, no matter what our skin colour is. And I did this globe to show how climate change is ruining our world, but I also did this bit to show how beautiful our world is and we don't want to lose it.
It's part of an educational initiative called the Triangle of Unity to foster understanding among pupils across the so-called Atlantic Triangle, covering Europe, Africa and the Americas, the areas of the world affected by the transatlantic slave trade.
They discussed how they live, but they mainly discuss climate change because, of course, these areas of the Atlantic Triangle now also are hit by climate change. And so we take climate change from being just a geography or scientific lesson into one of empathy and understanding, because now they have compatriots in the Atlantic Triangle who are experiencing it on a day-to-day level.
In Nigeria, the temperature is rising, and then I drew scarce with water trucks just to symbolize how water is really, really scarce.
I liked about animals that are going extinct and wars happening and how it affects people like Indigenous people and uprooting them from their communities.
I'm bowled over really by the perception of the pupils. I think they are seeing what so many who are in great leadership roles and influence roles at the moment aren't perhaps always seeing, is that we need a world of global citizenship where we see the common good, that we see the importance of human dignity and racial harmony, all these things which the children have seen very clearly and want to promote. And my goodness, the world needs to hear it.
So the artworks are an invitation to stop and think in the grounds of Southwark Cathedral. Alice Bandukravi, BBC London.
Pause for thought. Now, if you're not one for major DIY, get this. Imagine taking your house apart, brick by brick, and then rebuilding it somewhere entirely different, miles away. That's what one woman did 50 years ago to her Hertfordshire home. And now there are plans to turn her story into a film. Our reporter Robbie West has been finding out more.
In 1975, a 50-year-old woman dismantled her Hertfordshire home and rebuilt it in Norfolk.
Well, I had to move to make way for a roundabout in a new road. And I've seen so many old houses destroyed that I thought I'd try and save this one.
May Savage moved her 15th century Elizabethan hall from Ware to Wells, a 100-mile trip that at the time baffled her family.
I went to see her before she took the bricks down. You know, we went to visit. And I thought she'd lost her marbles.
Christine remembers her aunt trying to get help from the Air Force when moving all the materials.
She wrote to the RAF, "Dear sir, I have this little cottage." Well, it's not a little cottage. I wondered if you had a helicopter that could lift the frame. I bought this little plot of land right by the village green. They write back, "Sorry, Miss Savage, we don't make a helicopter that large." Because she's put the dimensions in, of course.
Born in London in 1911, May lost both parents as a child. She trained as an engineer, during the war helped design fighter planes, but never married or had children. When she died, there was still a lot of work that needed completing, and her niece took on the job.
I plastered like the dickens. The garden was up to the first floor, cut down the garden, and look at it now. I turned into Auntie May. She did say when she was alive, "I think I've put it up the wrong way round." And my husband said, "Well, you know what you can do, Auntie? You can always take it down and move it."
When the BBC filmed with May, she said that she was driven by a responsibility to preserve great architecture.
I just think it's worth doing. I don't see everything destroyed. I don't think we've got the right to keep destroying everything that we do.
Robbie West with that remarkable story. Right, it's time to get the weather with Kate. Hiya, and thankfully not as bitterly cold as yesterday.
No, but it was still only 6 degrees, so still actually cold. But because it struggled so much for the last couple of days, it felt a lot less cold. There was still, as you can see here, a little bit of ice around. We had rain overnight. That's how less cold it was. It fell as rain. But the ground, of course, still very cold, so it formed ice once it landed on the ground. Now, for tonight, this is what's happening. We've got cold air still, but you'll notice through the course of Thursday, this milder air just starts to move in. We've got a deepening area of low pressure, which is in fact a named storm, Storm Goretti, but more on that in a bit. Now for tonight, it's largely dry to start with, but the cloud is increasing, and with that, the thicker cloud, you might get a little bit of light rain, some patchy drizzle. And with the ground getting so cold again, down to 0, potentially we could have a bit of ice. Perhaps not quite as treacherous as this morning, where it was more widespread, but we still could get a few patches. Now for Thursday, starting off largely dry. This is Storm Goretti coming up from the south, bringing very heavy rain, stronger winds, and for some snow. Temperatures between 4 and 6 Celsius. Now during the day, it will be very heavy rain. At that point, the wind will start to strengthen. Multiple warnings in. For us, we're not looking too bad. We haven't got too many in. Out towards the home counties, there is a yellow weather warning in place for snow overnight Thursday. This is what's happening overnight. The rain moves north. It bumps into that colder air as it spirals around, bringing in colder air still. It could turn to snow. We could, over higher ground, the Chilterns could see up to 15 centimetres. Elsewhere, bit of sleet, bit of rain, bit of wet snow mixed in there. Minimum temperature 2 or 3 Celsius. Now for Friday, that low pressure system, Storm Goretti, continues to spiral away. At that point, the wind gets even stronger. And also that colder air could make things turn a little bit wintry ahead of the rain clearing. But it will eventually clear as we head through Friday. A breezy day, temperatures 4 or 5 Celsius. Now, as we head towards the weekend, you can see this is Storm Goretti moving away around the outside, that northerly flow. It's still going to be very cold as we head into the weekend. Not as cold as it was earlier on this week, but still cold nonetheless, with temperatures only reaching around 4 or 5 Celsius. Saturday is looking dry at the moment. There is the potential for a little bit of snow overnight Sunday into Monday, but potentially not very much. Riz.
Kate, there's a lot in there, isn't there? Thank you very much indeed. The lovely Kate Kinsella there. And that is it from us. In case you missed it, there are some great pictures on our Instagram of London Zoo's big count yesterday, their annual animal stocktake. They really are worth a look. From me and all the team, thanks very much for watching. And whatever you're doing, enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.